Well, I'm in politics by default, not by design. I had no intentions of being in politics. The last thing I thought, and my friends ever thought, would be that I would stray into politics. I literally strayed into politics because I was with Sanjay Gandhi in school. And when the turbulent times of 74 with the Jayaprakash Narayan movement, etc. came, I gradually started getting sucked into this. And when I got sucked into this, I still never thought that I would get into politics. There's a family business which I was involved with, and my family also never thought this. I thought that I would continue to grow the company, which was a family company of mine. But then came the emergency, and I found myself more and more involved with Sanjay, and at that time Mrs. Gandhi. We lost the election in 77, and if I withdrew myself at that time, I thought that look, that I'm really ditching my friend. So I got sucked into it even more to stand by them, and I joined the Youth Congress. When I joined the Youth Congress, my family was aghast. My father one day told me that, politics is a game for scoundrels. You're spoiling our family name. What the hell are you doing in this? So I said, no, I'm just with a friend. Then came the announcement of the election in 79. And as one of the members of the Youth Congress, I was told that, and I didn't know anything about contesting elections, didn't know much about politics also. I decided that, okay, we'll contest. And I contested. So that's how I came into politics. And I promised my family this would be the first and last time I ever contested an election. But then that's what never happened.
I think the story was somewhat on familiar lines for me as well. Though I was involved in public service and politics from afar because of my father's presence in politics. I remember first campaigning for him in 1984 when I was 13 years old, when he fought Atal Bihari Vajpayee in Gwalior. And then, since then, I'd been sort of in and out of campaigns, but never constantly in the process. And I had gone to university abroad, and I had worked as a banker for 5 or 6 years, and I was very much on a completely different track. Gone back to business school at Stanford, and we'd taken part in a business plan competition, which my team, which was myself and another colleague at Stanford Business School and 2 colleagues at the Stanford Engineering School, we actually ended up winning the business plan competition. So we suddenly realized that this was something that was real. And then we started looking at raising funding. We looked at hiring a CEO, and all of those building blocks were in place when I came back in mid-August of 2001 back to India after graduating. And then fate dealt a really cruel blow, and my whole world changed. And then got into, and I don't like calling it politics. I prefer calling it much more public service, because really that was my father's calling, and that is my calling. A very funny sort of anecdote, when I contested in 2002 and won my first election, then I had a lot of friends back at business school who were doing different things after graduating. And when we were at business school, a lot of us are there as married couples. I had taken my son along as well. So we'd formed very strong bonds over those 2 years with some people from across the world. And so one of the children who I had spent a lot of time with, my friend's children, found out that I'd become a senator, right? So the child asked the parent, what is Uncle Jay doing? And he said, well, he's in politics. So the child, who was a 5-year-old child, said, what does that mean? So as typical American environment, the father turns around to the child and says that, why don't you look it up? The child, ingenious, right? So he said, okay. He went back and came back to the father, and he said, what is he doing in this profession? So the father said, why? So he said, well, I looked up the meaning of politics, and you know, I saw poly and it meant many, and then I saw ticks and it meant blood-sucking insects. And, you know, what the hell is he doing in this job, right? So anyway, c'est la vie, and so that's where we are 15 years down the road.
You know, times have changed so much, and Parliament has changed so much, the world has changed so much, India has changed so much. I remember my first maiden speech in Parliament, and in those days, all this liberalization hadn't come. We were
Mixed economy.
It was a mixed economy, or whatever we want to call it. IMF loans and all that kind of thing, and trying to understand now what an IMF loan was and what it meant and what the implications were. And we had different kind of stalwarts. Mr. Biju Patnaik, you know, Jyotirmay Basu, Mr. Bajpai, of course, was there, Madhu Danavate. And everybody would listen to the other's point of view. You know, you could say, you could make a noise of when to speak. But once you spoke, it was, I remember in my maiden speech in Parliament, I was halfway through, and Mr. Biju Patnaik stood up and said that I want the permission from the chair to go because I've got to go somewhere. But it's his maiden speech, so I want to take his permission. I want to ask him. He won't be offended if I go. That was the demeanor. Now, all that is changed. There's been so much fragmentation of polity. And sometimes when I reflect on me having got into politics, I ask myself this question whether if this is what it was at that time, would I have chosen to get into it? This is what has changed, and aspirations of the people, everybody looked for a government job in those days. Nobody wanted a private sector job. People will come to you that, can you help me to get a government job? If you told them that, what about the private sector? He said, forget it. You know, private sector was not. Things have changed so much. There was no mobility of people. Of course, there was no electronic media. Television was not shown.
We had Krishi Darshan.
We had Krishi Darshan and black and white TV. I remember the big fight whether we should move from black and white TV to color TV.
Yes.
And I remember Mr. Vasant Sathe saying that we can have black and white TV, but nobody makes it anymore. So, you know, Parliament, the majority of Parliament said, why should we waste money on color TV? And Mr. Sathe had to explain that we won't get spare parts for the tubes and all that kind of thing, the technology at that time. You will not get anything. So we have to, whether we like it or not. But there were people who did not even understand this. And so things have changed so much. In elections, things have changed so much. Previously, while campaigning, you could know that this village is going to vote for you, or this village is with your party or not with your party. Today, you don't know whether the household, the members of the household are with you or not with you. They all vote differently. So things have changed so much, and I have reflected on this. I was reading the other day, much of what I said in Parliament 30 years ago, 35 years ago. Does it have any relevance to what I said at that time? And I must say I was very happy, because I never made the faux pas, neither did I have the vision. But I think it happened more by default, that I was happy with all what I said at that time on various legislation, on various issues. Women's rights, I spoke on that time, and nobody was talking about women's. Mrs. Gandhi, Indira Gandhi, was a formidable face in Parliament, and people would listen to her in rapt attention. None of that what happens today. If any member spoke, he would fight to speak, to get a chance to speak. But once he spoke, he didn't have to fight to be heard. Today, you have to fight to be heard. And this is what sometimes to me is very disappointing.
When I first came in 2002, you had stalwarts like Atal Bihari Vajpayee who'd get up and speak, and others, and you'd be listening with rapt attention. Today it's
you've got to struggle to speak.
You struggle to speak,
yeah.
and to be heard. And the attitude of, I think we must always have a respect for another person's views. They may not be echoing what my views are, but you've got to be able to have that respect to hear things. The other thing, which has changed a lot in the last 15 years, is really the personalization of politics and debates in India. And I think a lot of it has become very personal in a negative point of view. And I don't think that's really good from a societal point of view. It's not really good from a country's point of view. We need to build people. But I see so often, and even sometimes on media, the whole categorization is in terms of actually taking down people. And I think we need to do a little bit of building people in our country, because we need those idols as well to look up to. Yeah. And with regard to elections, I mean, the dynamics in the the elections that I have fought, I mean, you've seen almost 45 years of it, it's changed completely. What used to happen, I remember when my father was a member of parliament, you and he shared a tremendous relationship, is an MP would go to his constituency once in 2 months or something like that. Today, you and I have to be there, every week. Yeah. So the whole dynamics is changing, and I think that's a good thing. But at the same time, I think delivery sometimes becomes a frustrating point for both you and me, because our whole inkling, and I'm speaking for you, is really much more developmental oriented than the politics of it. And I think sometimes getting that last mile work done gets very frustrating, but I think we keep pushing at it, which is extremely important.
You find graduates of engineering, and I have thousands of them.
Yes.
Who come for jobs. I said, what are you? He says, I'm an engineer. I said, what are you? BE mechanical. I look at him, I say, he's not fit to be a graduate, and he's talking about being a BE mechanical. One of the worrying things is education. The colleges in our country, this is the technology in one of the states. Now, all the colleges in our country are told they are affiliated with universities. The university tells them, we will continue your recognition based on your results. And how do they get the results? So they, by unfair means. So here's a person who says, I'm a mechanical engineer. And when I speak to somebody that please get him a job, he's one of my leaders of my district, please, it's his son, and he gets interviewed. I had a very interesting thing, one of the large companies, I don't want to name, I sent him 20 biodatas, and they didn't take one. So then I rang him up, I said, what's happened? He said, I'll come and meet you. When he met me, he came with his answer sheet. The first question they asked him in the interview was, write your biodata. He says, this is what he wrote. He didn't know how to write his own biodata. And he's a graduate engineer. Now, if 70% of our engineering graduates or MBA, you see the kind of MBAs which are coming out, or any of these degrees, it's shuddering, because how will they get a job? On the other hand, it's not that the job opportunities are abundantly available. They are not abundantly available, and when they are available, none of these chaps, none of these youngsters will be able to get that job.
But don't you think on that note that also in our country we have to change the way that we actually look at skilling our people? Because today it is very supply oriented. So you have an engineering institution or you have a college, here comes the raw material, here's the throughput, and there's the output in terms of the product. Where that output goes, no one knows. Or is it even going anywhere? No one even cares, yeah. Right? Should we not as a country look at it from, as opposed to a supply point of view, look at it from a demand point of view? I.e. actually go and suss out in the market, what is it that the market is looking for in terms of talent? And then take our kids, our aspirational kids, skill them adequately towards meeting that demand, and thereby also guaranteeing them a job. Now, for example, I know that you have one of them, and I have put up one in my constituency, a vocational training institute. And a vocational training institute, and the one that I have is a joint venture between ILFS and GAIL, does exactly that. It actually goes and susses out, Kelvinator needs so many, guys who are electricians, or Dunkin' Donuts needs these delivery men, and goes and actually trains them in English skills, marketing skills. And then the one condition that I put on these guys is that the one thing that you have to do is that if you train Jyotiraditya Scindia, you've got to guarantee Jyotiraditya Scindia his first job. So you've got to guarantee me my 8,000 rupees or 6,000 or 10,000 rupee first paycheck. What I do from there on, once I stay on that job for 6 months, is my responsibility. But I find that in India, many times that connect between employability and the actual first employment, that disconnect is huge. And for example, a country like Germany does it amazingly.
Yeah.
The interface that they have between their institutes of learning and industry is, the coupling is tremendous.
10 years ago, I thought that what can I do? What should be the biggest thing I can do in my district? And I said that the best thing I can do is to set up training centers. And I'm very proud of one thing. Somebody says, what have you achieved in your so many years in parliament and so many years of 3 generations of people voting for you? I say one thing, that today my district has the highest amount of skill centers in the country, if not the world. Various types of skill centers. And I monitor them to see how they are, what is the hit rate in getting a job. I remember I had people who had done IT, coming from a backward rural district who had done IT, struggled to do IT. And I would talk to the IT stalwarts of the country that how about some jobs? They said, we recruit 5,000 people a year, no problem. So I said, okay, I'll send you the biodatas. Now, 100 out of 100 would get rejected. Not one would be taken. I realized that we needed a finishing school.
Yes.
We needed a finishing school for IT graduates. And this finishing school worked like hell. So I worked on a model. Then various other skilling centers, and I'd want everybody to know this, that today we're talking of skilling. I did it 10 years ago. The largest amount of skill centers in any district in this country is in my district. And they work. They work. People are able to get jobs. But one of the challenges is, as you know this very well, in a village, he goes from his village to a college. He does engineering. And the whole village knows this chap has gone to do engineering, he's done his engineering. Now he can't get a job. He's not fit for the village. He's not fit for a job. He's not fit for an urban area. So his dilemma is so profound, and his frustration. It's not his dilemma. Yes. It's not that he needs the job. His family may be in agriculture. It's not that he needs the money to eat. His family has a disposable income. But his frustration is so profound. And this is when I said it worries me, that the frustrations of this younger generation of not being able to compete with, seeing the world. Today they are seeing the world on television, they are seeing the world on their phone, and they understand the world much more than in our youth we understood.
Much more, but let me ask you this. Why is it that there is that frustration? There is that frustration in me because I do believe that I can compete with you, but I am being deprived of the platform that you have. And I think that from that stems that degree of frustration, because it's coming really from, and I think this is a great change within India, it's really coming from the fact that I need to compete with others of my ilk, irrespective of what I have as a safety net, right? And I think in the last 15, 20 years, that change has come in India.
That change has come, but you know what? There's another fear.
Let me give you an example. So when I first went to undergrad, right, in 1990, and when I went and joined Harvard, we have 2 or 3 summers, we do a summer job. My first summer I came home and I went to Delhi Gymkhana and I met up with all my friends and everything, right? And I went back to college. So we were sitting in the dining hall, the boarding house, over dinner, the 6, 7 of us as friends. And so we started talking about, so what did you do over the summer? So someone said, I worked at this law firm. And someone said, oh, I was at this investment bank. And someone said, oh, I was at this consulting firm. And then it came around to me, and I had no answer because, I spent 2.5 months at home with my family and I did just about nothing. And I felt so small and so inadequate. And that's when I promised myself that the next 2 summers that I have, I'm going to get a job and I'm going to work in the US. And I'm going to go back home only for 3 weeks, but work. And I think that instills in you a sense of responsibility, a sense of competition, a sense of wanting to propel yourself forward in many ways. And I think that huge change has come about in the youth in India as well.
One of the other concerns I have, let me bounce it off you, is that technology will be making so many thousands and millions of jobs redundant.
Yes.
Now, on one hand, we are talking of creating employment. On the other hand, we are talking of technology, which is going to make so many jobs redundant. We've seen this in the Western world.
In the auto industry.
In the auto industry. Robotics.
Yeah.
Now, robotics are taking over. Many
Artificial
countries.
intelligence.
And more so, when we talk of the frustration of the youth, it's not that in India, our perception, that the world's perception of India has changed. Our own perception of ourselves has changed. This is another big thing which has happened. I remember the perception which India had of itself is very different to what it was 30 years ago.
Yes.
In the last 10 years, the perception of the world on India has changed, but more so, the perception of India to ourselves has changed.
Yes.
What I'm talking of today, I would not have even talked of 20 years ago. So
no, we take great pride in ourselves.
yeah, absolutely.
You know,
and
when we go abroad or you walk in somewhere into a conference, the view towards India is one of respect now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And but so, coming back to this point of the frustrations, then coming back to, I think there's another very important challenge we have, and that is what do we do with rural India? Rural India drives India's economy. This, I completely don't buy the theory that it's urban India which drives India's economy. Why rural India? Because of their disposable incomes. It's not incomes, per capita incomes, it is disposable incomes. A 5 lakh rupee income per year in my district or yours is one SUV. A 5 lakh rupee per year income in Delhi means nothing.
Nothing.
You can't survive. So it's rural India which is driving it. And what's driving rural India is agriculture. Our percentage in GDP terms has gone down. Agriculture's contribution to GDP has gone down from 27% is now 17%, some say it's 17,
14,
some say
14 now.
whatever it is. But the number of people haven't gone down. The contribution, because other factors in contributing to the GDP have gone up, so agriculture has been pushed down. But if you see that the number of people directly or indirectly engaged in agriculture, that has not gone down. How do we address this challenge of rural India, which is driven by agricultural support? This again is a challenge for us to look at the future.
For me, my election is a process. And that process for me is a 5-year tenure. So my election is a 5-year process. If I'm successful in that 5-year process, in terms of fulfilling aspirations, obviously you can't fulfill everyone's aspirations, but I feel all right with myself going to bed at night in terms of I have tried to do the best that I could, right? Then that election, i.e. the event, then becomes an event. So for me, it is, and I think very much for and I'm speaking for him, but I think very much for him as well. It's the 5-year process. The engagement process has to be a continuous 5-year process. And I've seen this in 15 years, and he's probably seen this much more than I have, is that you have two kinds of politicians in this country, right? You have type A that overcommits but underdelivers, right? And I'm not going to have any veiled references to, you know, to the current environment. And then you have type B, which undercommits but overdelivers. And I have tried successfully and maybe unsuccessfully on many counts to be a type B rather than a type A, right? And I think that people must also, I think a lot of it also is about intangibility. It's not everything can be touched and felt. Everything is not tangible. There are many things that are intangible. I just like this person. I think that this person is a good person. I think what this person is saying, he's saying from his heart as opposed to what he needs to say to get my vote. And I think Indians are amazing. We are, as a people, are amazing in terms of being able to get a sense of that.
first let me tell you personally, now being in the opposition, not being in government, I was in government in 1991, and it's been a long ride. Not being in government now, I think it's achhe than I am, because I now know how to operate the remote of my TV, which I did not know. I didn't know there was a thing called Apple TV. I thought it was a channel. And there are many more things you can do. Now, where the party is concerned, yes, we have been out of power. I saw 77 when we were not in government. I saw the period between 1996 and 2004 when we were not in government. So, in the Congress, I think we've understood it. That we are not in government sometime, then we were 10 years continuously in government. So, it's not that we didn't have the pulse of the people. I really think that there is in elections, there's a very big shelf life syndrome. There's a very big shelf life, expires on so-and-so date. People are looking for change. And that's more so going to happen. I see this happening more so in the next 10 years, in the next 5 years. That people are going to say, okay, this has not happened. So we want a change of government. Let's try this. There have been new political parties who've come in. They've rejected the old political parties right here in Delhi, saying, okay, let's try this new formulation, because people are looking for change. They want to get out of conventional politics. Look at the United States. You're seeing Donald Trump emerge. What surprises me is not that whether he's leading or not leading. I'm surprised that how many number of people are supporting him, not the number of people who are not supporting him. I question myself that, because the people are looking at a new chemistry with politicians. This is happening in Europe. This is happening in the United States. And I'm sure it's going to happen in India. The Congress has to adopt and adapt to these changes, because the polity in this country is changing, the polity in the world is changing. And that is the important thing to take note of.
I mean, the one thing that I would say is that, sometimes I do feel a sense of, I think hurt is too strong a word, but a sense of despair when all politicians are painted with the same brush. Like in any other profession, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But very few examples of actually portrayal of the good is actually seen today in India, at least in our ilk. And that is to a certain extent, the right word for it is sometimes demoralizing, right? Having said that, I certainly think, we lost the pulse in 2014. There's no way that we would have had the result that we did if our finger had still been on the pulse. And I think it's important that we, A, admit that, B, internalize that, and C, put forward a strategy to regain that. I don't think it's that difficult to do. I think we need to go back to the drawing board and go back to the basics. And I think in many ways the basics is, also sitting in front of us today. I think the Gandhi family is not only a strong uniting factor for the Congress party itself, but I think in many ways across pan-India is revered from panchayat to village to ward, because they stand for certain principles. And I'm going, and you're taking me where I wanted to go eventually, which is I firmly believe that the Congress party stands for certain values, morals, and principles. It stands for certain principles of equity. It stands for certain principles of inclusiveness. It stands for certain principles of tolerance. And these three things, equity, inclusiveness, and tolerance, are becoming a challenge not only for India today, but are becoming a challenge in the world, right? And I think we need to stick to our roots, but sticking to our roots, we also need to present a new vision for India. And I think we have that capability, because if you, and I'm not saying this because I'm a congressman, but I really think that even if I were dispassionate and I did not wear any color of political hat, the amount of human resource potential that you have in this particular party in this country, I don't think any other party in this country, I don't think any other party in Asia probably could have. But I think it's important for us to be able to channelize that. It's important for us to be able to put together a strategy. And we still have 3 years to be able to do that.
Nowhere has dynasty been attacked than in the 2004 parliament elections, when they attacked Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. I don't want to take it on that plane. Nobody. But people said, somebody said, I'll shave my head, and somebody said, I'll do this, and I'll do that. And you had a formidable personality like Mr. Bajpai there. And nobody thought that. So I don't think dynasty is an issue at all.
This same BJP that is sitting at 285 right now, don't forget, was sitting at 2. Right? The same Congress that was sitting at 201, today is sitting at 44. That's the beauty of democracy. And you and I have to respect that. Right? But what does that do for people like me? It should make my resolve even firmer to come back and say, yes, I will win your trust. Here's my game plan, and I'm going to win your trust. Give me another chance. I have the right instincts. Believe in me. Right? And I certainly believe that in the 3 years that we have, you will see the Congress party emerge.
Well, I think our message to the people that this politics of slogans, politics of event management, in the end, what does it deliver? How many people have got a job? You know, people voted in the last elections based on such promises, and people are realizing. You must understand that when I say this, or when he says it, we do also understand the sense of the people, because we've got to go back to our elections. We've come from elections, and we'll go back to elections. I will not have the privilege of going to Rajya Sabha, but when I say this, that people are now buying this. Yes, we thought, the agricultural sector thought they'll get 1 lakh rupees per acre. They say, forget 1 lakh rupees, we can't get 10,000. What's happening? We are looking for our seeds, we're looking for our fertilizer. What are the prices? They're looking for jobs, and we were told that there'll be 1 crore jobs every year. They're not even 50,000. So that's the message to the people. And at the end of the day, I think people understand what they look for is peace and security. They don't look for divisive politics. And this is going to be realized more and more, that this divisive politics is going to be rejected. So that's our message to the people, that Congress does not stand for this. We don't represent a religion, we don't represent a caste. We represent an ethos, we represent the principles we stood by. Okay, we didn't understand the pulse of the people at that time. There was a tremendous shift of aspirations. There were people who were felt they had been let down. Fine, this happens. But our message to the people is that in the end of the day, the only party which can deliver, not on only one front, whether on the international front, whether on the national front, in all the facets of the national front, is the Congress party. That is our message to the people. And I'm seeing that more and more people are agreeing with this, which I didn't see 2 years ago, because nothing was tested. It's all very well to go when you're not tested. But the tough part is, having been tested, now let's see.
You know, I agree, and I echo what all Mr. Nath said, and I think if you want to answer that question, just think about what you would think sitting with your home, with your family at home. What is it that concerns you? You want an environment around you which is peaceful, allows you to exist, sense of security. You want an ability to be able to grow in your career so that you and I can leave for the next generation a better path to follow than we possibly had, right? That's your aspiration. 3, you also want to be proud of where your country stands on the National Committee of Nations, right? And I think that's what the Congress party really stands for. Look at what today is happening on the international scene, whether it is with Pakistan, whether it is with China, whether even with the US. Look at what's happening in Kashmir. You've got a state that's burning for the 46th day today, right? Internal security issues, economy. I'm just going to request you, walk down the road. I talk to the common man on the road, the rickshawala, the bhaji seller, your executive. Ask anyone has a chid income and you'll get your answer. But I really believe, more importantly, it's important for us to build our house. It's not good enough for me to say that your house is crumbling. I've got to build my house. I've got to be seen as not the alternative to you, but I've got to be seen as the party that represents your dream.
As the
right?
only alternative.
And that's what the Congress party, so what is that message? That, according to me, that message must contain a segment for every part of the population of this country. For me, a big segment is not only the youth, but also women. 50% of our nation. You want our country to be a human resource basket to the world? We've got to make sure that women don't have an equal opportunity, but even more than equal opportunity today in India, if we actually want to see India rise. And it was only Rajiv Gandhi who actually made that possible, through the panchayat system, through the reservation system. So women, youth, agriculture, manufacturing. For me, these 4 areas, and for the state, and for the state, by state I mean not the state government, but the state meaning the central government, to do what it's paid to do. I, as an income tax assessee, pay taxes for what? I need to make sure that I get my bang for my buck. I get my amenities, I get my security, I get municipalities that work. That's what a government has to do. And that's where we have to be accountable.
From Sanjay Gandhi, he had his time. India was different. Politics was different. Mrs. Gandhi, again, at that given time, she had her ways. She was an undisputed leader. Rajiv Gandhi, again, launched India, started the transformation of India. The real transformation, we talk of the cell phone, we talk of computers. I remember his father was the railway minister. His father was the railway minister at that time. And there was an agitation that there should be no computerization. And it was he who stood by that there should be computerization. You would have never seen. The IT industry, if they owe anything to anybody, is to Rajiv Gandhi. Now, at that time, it was relevant. Today, it's not relevant. Nobody even thinks of it. It's taken for granted. So, every person I worked with at that given time, it had a lot of relevance. They had the leadership of those times. You can't superimpose a leader of that time on today's times. And we got to think of what is this country today? What is this country in all sections of society? What we do in politics, how does it affect all sections of society? What we do in governance, how does it affect all sections of society in every part of the country? You may be doing something which is good for Haryana, but is not going to be good for, say, the Northeast. You may be doing something which is good for Kerala, but may not be good. You know, simple examples. If you talk about spices, you know, Kerala will look at spices differently, and Haryana and Punjab will look at spices differently. For them, it may be their livelihood. You talk of cashew nuts, but somebody will say it means different things to different people. So, I come back to this complexity of the country. Unless the polity or those in government understand and are willing to address the complexities of this country in its entirety, I think we can be in great trouble.
And I think to be able to do that, to complete where he started, to be able to do that, you've got to have two things. You've got to have a great team, and you've got to be able to empower and trust people. The first thing that we are taught in terms of management, right? You're only as strong as the weakest link in your chain, right? So you've got to be, what is an effective leader? An effective leader is one who can build a great team and then empower them to perform.
Mrs. Sonia Gandhi has demonstrated to leading the party to victory in 2004, despite being almost to a point of ridiculing her, saying, and everybody said, I remember in the social scene of Delhi going to a marriage reception 2 months or 3 months before the 2004 election, and people jeering at me, "Arey, you are Sonia Gandhi's party, where will you stand a chance?" And I would tell them, you wait and see. This shows, and that's a point I very emphatically want to make, which I make whenever I can, is that in Delhi, Delhi claims to be the pulse of the nation. Let me tell you this, that I don't want to use strong words, but Delhi represents nothing of this nation. Delhi represents nothing of this nation because the heartbeats of various parts, various sections of society are not the heartbeats of Delhi. And we must recognize this. So you asked me this question about Sonia Gandhi, and I said that, yeah, she led the party to victory. She was the president of the party. She led it to victory, and if we have to say, it was she, single-handedly, who would get the credit for it, despite not only an attack on the Congress party, but an attack on Sonia Gandhi. The whole thing was an attack on Sonia Gandhi, and people thought that this country is not going to be foolish to vote for. They called her Italian, they called her this, they called her all kinds of names. And so now the same thing may be said about Rahul Gandhi today. Of course, we must recognize that he's new to this. He's new to the polity of today. So let him evolve. And I don't see, he's not in the politics of sloganeering. He has not given assurances. He's not in that I can deliver so much, I will do this. He's not. I think he's very down to earth, and people will see once he's evolving all the time, him unleashing himself.
My experience with Mrs. Gandhi, and I think that both 2004 and 2009 elections, her ability to be able to bring everyone along, and after winning an election, to be able to give members of a team the freedom to and empower them to be able to run their various departments, but at the same time give a very broad outline of what is it that the Congress party and the UPA government stands for, which are the three words that I used, which is inclusiveness, equity, and development. And those three were pretty much the cornerstone of the 2004 government and the 2009 government. And I think it's that stewardship within the Congress party, and I think that stewardship for the people of India that brought millions and rather billions of people close to her and built that trust in her. And I think with Rahul Gandhi, you have a very direct approach. He will never mince words. He will say it as it is. Whatever he feels, you will see that explicit in his face, in his demeanor, and what he says. And I think in many ways, it's a huge refreshing change for India, because India needs genuineness in her politicians as well. Too many of us are full of charades, and we will say something that's, politically correct, even though we may not believe in it, right? And you've got a young person out there who will say it as it is, and what he believes in, he will stand by. And he's extremely strong on that, and it's something that I've seen personally. Mid-August of 2001, back to India after graduating. And then fate dealt a really cruel blow, and my whole world changed. And then got into, and I don't like calling it politics. I prefer calling it much more public service, because really that was my father's calling and that is my calling.